Hello, friends. At long last, we get together to talk about future fucking and nostalgia bathing. That's right, future fucking and nostalgia bathing. Um, I think we are all familiar with these things, even if we don't necessarily call them thus. Um, I would say that emotional sobriety arises from meeting everything with compassion. So I think sometimes it's easy to get into this pattern when we are either nostalgia bathing, thinking about the past, either with regret or nostalgia, but it's a past focus. And then of course, future fucking is either a wish or a fear about the future. In either case, we're pretty much fucking ourselves by squandering our lives being in either the past or the future instead of the present. However, I would veer from some traditions who would encourage you to stop thinking those thoughts. Um, I think that is a fool's errand. I don't think you can be like, oh, okay, I'm I'm not going to think about that anymore. It's like saying, don't think about a white elephant. And of course, what do you think about a white elephant? So, my method is to look at them as whether it be the past thoughts or the future thoughts, you look at them as guests, and you're the host, and you welcome them. You invite them in. You might not have invited them initially, but usually you have summoned them. You might not have deliberately invited them, but somehow you have summoned them. Let's see different ways that this works out. Like recently, I found myself kind of crushing on this guy, and so I spent a lot of time, almost literally future fucking, um, and really thinking about, oh, wouldn't that be fun? Oh my God. Or like playing out those little conversations in your head, like, oh, I think I'd like to say that to him. Or like, maybe I'd like to say that to him. And oh, wouldn't that seem so witty and fun? And then because I'm like, don't veer too far out of my home space of practice, I was like, oh, well, look at you. Aren't you going for a fine ride today? Um, so I had to be like, well, what do we notice from this? I guess what what information is this guest bringing to the present moment? Okay, so this guest, this future fucking guest, is bringing some information to my current moment about, oh, what is attractive to me now? Maybe it's giving me some information that, oh, maybe it's time to start dating again. Maybe it's time for, maybe my tastes have changed. Oh, isn't it interesting that this person is actually what is really like this kind of person, this kind of man is what's lighting me up now. But it was different not too long ago. So instead of berating myself or being like, get out of here, you uninvited guest thought, I think in a lot of different meditation schools, it's like, oh, stop thinking those thoughts. Don't have any thoughts. Ignore the thoughts. Get rid of the thoughts. Banish the thoughts. No, my feeling is you invite those thoughts in as a guest. And so what do I learn? I actually am getting valuable information from these guests, but I am inviting them in to have them tell me what they need to say, and then they can move along and go along their way. The future fucking and nostalgia bathing are representatives of your wishes and fears. I mean, they can be delusional, they can be insightful, and it kind of doesn't matter which they are because both of those categories are still just mental objects of your own invention. So instead of reacting as if whether it's delusional or insightful is real, let's just go with whether it's delusional or insightful. Both of these are fictions that you're inventing in your head. So, what does that information reveal about what's emerging in the current present moment? Does that make sense? Hopefully. If not, you can ask on the call tonight. So, no banishing the thought, just noticing the thought and the feeling that comes with it, whether it's a fear, an insight, an aspiration, and just staying with it, staying with not knowing, staying with, oh, what is, maybe this is somewhere in that weird space between an insight and a delusion. Because how can you really know until you get to a future place, which will still not be the future in the future, because it's really all just the present. It's just one present moment after another. So, how can we listen for whatever message this particular thought has to bring, right? Well, first of all, we have to ground in the home space, right? We have to actually be able to notice that a guest has arrived. If we're so busy running around the house, somebody could have slipped in and started sitting on the couch and we still wouldn't even know it. It would take us actually quite a bit of time. The dog would probably notice before we would. So first of all, like not straying too far from that home space of practice is, let's face it, the most challenging part of all of the tools that we talk about in here. It's the groundwork. It's the foundation. The home space is the ultimate foundation. Being able to ground ourselves on our bodies, going back to the breath, being able to notice without knowing. Noticing without knowing. Just being like, whew, wow. Oh, when I thought about that, I got a little lightheaded and I felt a little tingle going all the way up from my pussy to my heart, right through my solar plexus, and it all felt alive and lit up and amazing. Okay, what kind of information does that give me? Before I make a story about what that thought is, before I attach it to, is it a fear? Is it an aspiration? Is it an insight? Is it a wish? Is it a dream? Is it a delusion? What is it? Before I start doing any of that, being fully in my home space allows me to understand it at its most fundamental energetic level. What is the energetic signature of that thought? What is the energetic signature of that thought? And if we can actually trace that, as soon as these things come up, that is the home space from which emotional sobriety naturally arises. Noticing without knowing, that ease in uncertainty. And that's a natural effect of staying completely in that home space. And are you going to stay in that home space all the time? No. That's part of the beauty of future fucking and nostalgia bathing, and that's part of why this is one of the subtler tools, because this is like dealing with future fucking and nostalgia bathing is having to set boundaries around your own thoughts, right? It's not only returning to the home space, it's also being embodied enough for a consistent enough period of time to notice the sensation, and then embodied enough to be able to react, to be able to respond without reacting, really, to be able to then put the rare protocol into effect. So to be in the home space, and then to have your own thoughts coming in. So this is creating boundaries around your own thoughts, which is a very subtle operation. So it requires a tremendous amount of spaciousness in your home space. Your home space has to have a nice big open floor plan in order to really be able to track the sensations that are coming in. And so once something comes into your field, you're like, whew, into your body, there it is. Oh, that's an exciting thought. That lights me up. Okay, so let me ground again. Whew, that's lingering. So can I do rare? Receive, assess, respond, exit. Okay, so I receive. Okay, so this thought is a guest. Oh, hello, guest. What is it? What is the message that you have to bring? I can assess. Oh, here. Hello, guest. Yes, I can assess your presence. You're more than welcome to be here. Let me assess what it is you've brought to say. What is your message, sweet guest? And then you can sort of suss out what is the message that this guest has brought. And then you can respond. Okay, thank you so much. That is a very interesting tone to add to what's emerging in the present. Fabulous. And then you can exit. Oh, thank you so much, thought. It has been so wonderful to have you here. I'm going to need to ask you to go now. Guests, like fish, stink after 3 days. And with certain fears, memories, wishes, they can start to stink after about like 3 minutes, I find. Because that is 3 minutes squandered, given away to something other than what is real, which is the present. Which is not to say that memories, wishes, aspirations, fears do not inform who you are in the present moment. So again, it's not about thinking that future fucking or nostalgia bathing is bad or negative. It's actually completely natural. Like noticing a color or a flower that bloomed, or the way the clouds look in the sky, or how a stalactite in a cave can sometimes look like Abraham Lincoln. I don't know if you've ever gone those cave tours when they're like, that stalactite looks like a whale. That stalagmite looks like Abraham Lincoln. It's just noticing. Not good, not bad. Just noticing. Like right now I have a lot of fear about and sadness, fear and grief about what my life will look like without my doggie, who has been my constant companion for the last 12 years. And when I start to imagine what that future would look like, when I start to imagine that absence, it informs me, it informs this present moment in that what that anticipation of loss in the future, what that message is that guest is bringing to this host is one of, why are you squandering this precious present moment? Go be with your puppy. So that's what I mean about breaking down the communication of that fear, or of that memory, or of that aspiration, insight, what have you. They all come for a reason. They all have something to say. And so you can meet them with friendliness, because if I then really get lost in a spiral of like that loss that is not yet complete, that feels so inevitable and is so painful. But what is that future grief connected to? Well, that future grief is connected to this present love. So that future fear of grief is here to give me a message about, you better damn well not squander any of that present love. I hope this is making sense. And I hope we can talk about this in the call tonight, if this does or does not make sense to you, because this thing of being able to really receive these thoughts fully, allowing them completely into the field, like let them rise, let them arise, meet them with the rare protocol. We receive, assess, respond, exit. We can't go through those 4 steps unless we are completely embodied, unless we are fully dropped into our feet, fully dropped into our home space. So then what if this guest won't leave? What if this guest is a real pain in the ass and we can't get them to go? As sometimes happens when you live in Maine and people come for the summer. What do? Well, that's when you start having to set up the boundaries that we talked about. And we talked about this as the most difficult boundary to set, a boundary within yourself around your own thoughts. Now, I have a friend of mine and I came up with the most fun way to set boundaries, and one that is more startling than painful for the people receiving them is sort of a boundaries jingle that goes, no, thank you, I'm not available for that. So if you can sing that jingle to the guest, the future fucking or nostalgia bathing guest that will not leave your field, that is both coming from you and squandering you, because those guests are part of your identity turbine. Anytime you have a thought like that that will not leave, it is something that you are clinging to. So it's not that guest won't leave, it's that you won't leave that guest. So I think coming at it from the point of view of setting boundaries, coming at it like you're setting a boundary with a separate person, I think can be really helpful, because it changes the frame around how you see your connection to that thought. Because it's so easy to be like, oh no, I really, like, to take my crush example, like, oh God, wouldn't it be amazing if you liked me back, and then we could go do this thing and that thing, and like we could have this conversation, and oh my God, that would be such a mind-blowing conversation. It'd be so amazing to have that kind of conversation with it. And it's like, do. And so for me, this thing kept coming up for about 3 days. Meanwhile, part of the reason that this is coming up is because I love nothing more than the lack of dinner making associated with a theoretical relationship. So I love a good fantasy relationship. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful thing for me. It enlivens my heart, clears my mind, actually really clutters my mind, but it's a place to go that I'm not really responsible for. And it took me out of being present with my dog who's sick. So what did this guest have to tell me? Okay, so it tells me what lights me up now, how my attractions have changed and shifted, that I am not wanting to feel the full breadth of grief and sadness around my dog. And that, and then really that I still have the capacity to do a great deal of squandering. I mean, I went back and forth in this for like 3 days of just feeling that elation and that aliveness of crushing on someone. And I don't want to say that like that's something that you stop doing, like stop feeling that aliveness. And that goes back to the talk on passion as well, of like, it's not that you are resisting anything ever. It's that you're letting it move through you so completely that you're able to metabolize it, that you're able to find what's nourishing in it and shit out the rest. So I can, instead of, I think a previous version of myself could have squandered months on this crush, right? So instead, over these 3 days, I look at the context of my life. I see what, and I see very specifically, like I ask in my mind, like, okay, I see that a guest has arrived. Guest, what is the message that you're here to bring? Because I know that I need to be back in the present moment. So what do you have to say that informs that? Because obviously you're here for a reason. I've summoned you or I've explicitly invited you. And either way, clearly you have some information that I need. And when I can meet those thoughts in that way, then I can really utilize my psycho-spiritual metabolism, and then emotional sobriety can rise from my confidence in that emotional metabolism, that I trust that I'm able to move responsively and responsibly to everything that comes through me, that I'm not going to get reactive and cling and pull and hold and clench. I trust my metabolism completely so that I can let go and allow the full grief of what's happening with my dog to come through me. And allow, like, the tingle of the crush. And allow the regret that this summer is more full of dog hospice than it is full of kayaking and hiking. And just be with each of those things as they present themselves, so that they can move through me sincerely, so that they can really nourish me, and that I can really shit out the rest, so that I can be present and loving and whole for the moment in front of me. Because that is emotional sobriety. That is the field of practice. That is the clear, clean, loving field of practice that we're cultivating in this group. I hope all of this makes sense. If there's anything that you would like to review, make a post in the group and we can address it in the call. All right, I will see you all later this evening. Bye.